Chris Phillips, SEC Unfiltered, of course. And when you bring up the Unfiltered tour, where
Yep.
are you headed this week?
Yeah, really, really excited, Mark. We are headed to the loveliest little village on the plains, Auburn, Alabama, to watch Auburn take on Arkansas at Jordan-Hare Stadium. Uh, I know that's not, college game days going to Norman. They're going to Oklahoma, Tennessee. That'll be a really good game, I'd imagine. I think this, though, the game we're going to, Mark, I think it might be the most intriguing game of the weekend. When you think about what's on the line for both these teams, you can have the argument of like who needs the win more. Hank Brown obviously getting his first start against an SEC team. We really just have no idea what to expect. Arkansas trying to have an early season signature win. They dropped the ball in Stillwater against Oklahoma State. Kind of let that opportunity slip through their fingers. So I'm excited, man. And again, I've never obviously been to Auburn, never been to Jordan-Hare. Have heard so many good things. Really excited to get down there and hang out with the great Tigers and Razorbacks because I'm friends with both. So it's going to be a really, really fun weekend.
Chris, we'll get to that headliner that people are talking about. And I guess Oklahoma officially becomes an SEC team this week and taking on Tennessee at home. These two teams got together around the Baker Mayfield era. OU won both of those games. So Tennessee looks like the better football team right now. They got it rolling. They're not seeing Kent State this week, though. I just can't believe that we actually were considering a running clock in a major college football game, but that's how bad it got in Knoxville last week. It's 65-0, folks, at halftime. And then we've got Oklahoma, of course, who's been ravaged by injuries, gets some of those guys back, as I understand, along the offensive line and a wide receiver this week. Actually turned in a pretty decent effort against Tulane, considering Tulane was playing good football, have a solid football team. Oklahoma pulled away in the second half. So Jackson Arnold's got to get his game together against Tennessee. What are your thoughts about this matchup?
So like I mentioned, Mark, I think we're going to honestly I think we'll look back on Sunday and say we went to the right game. I think Auburn, Arkansas has got the potential to be the drunkest game of the weekend, kind of like LSU, South Carolina was, where it was just kind of wacky all over the place. Because I think with this one, the hype, the hoopla, the buildup, Mark, dare I say, I think it's gonna outweigh what we get in the game because I think Tennessee's going to win this game by double digits. I've seen nothing from Oklahoma offensively that tells me they can keep up. Tennessee's front seven is legitimate. They are for real. They are ferocious. And Oklahoma struggled against non-conference competition to move the ball against them and to block them. Mark, Jackson Arnold is this team's leading rusher. I mean, they can't run the ball. They can't get a push. And that's coming against, Temple, Houston, and Tulane. And all due respect to those three teams, this Tennessee team is different. Now, I think what could be interesting because Oklahoma's defense is legit too. I love the under in this game, by the way. I don't know how the over-under is at 57.5 because I think we got a pair of really good defenses. I do think that Oklahoma's defense can make this interesting early if they can force Nico into a mistake or two, maybe give the offense a short field, make things sort of simple for Jackson Arnold. And like you mentioned, they're getting some guys back from injury, so that could make a difference for sure. But I do trust Tennessee. I do trust Nico Iamaleava. I trust the running game with Dylan Sampson. I love the weapons. Obviously, they have and I know again they've been picking on some inferior competition. There's no doubt they've inflated their stats a good bit. But they did also dismantle an NC State team that I think a lot of people had high hopes for to compete in the ACC. And I know they've ended up probably not being very good. Let's just call it for what it is. But I love this Tennessee team, Mark. I picked them to go to the college ball playoff in the preseason. I just think when you look at the matchup in this game, the two defenses are what we're going to be talking about. But I don't know how. And I think this game could be close at half, Mark. But I think Tennessee will pull away. I don't know how Oklahoma is going to be able to go blow for blow with Tennessee because at some point I think that defense for Oklahoma is going to let up. Like I just think at some point it's probably going to be a lot of bend but don't break. They're probably going to break at some point. Can Jackson Arnold and company, can the offensive line, can they give him time, get enough of a push to give him time to operate? Can they establish any sort of running game? Because Deion Burks, I think, can have success against that secondary, but it's all about can they protect Jackson Arnold. And if they can't, if James Pierce Jr. and company are getting in the backfield, getting after him, you're going to force him into some mistakes. I mean, we've seen he's a bit of a gunslinger, and things can get sideways. So I like Tennessee in this game. I know the emotions of Josh Heupel going back to Norman and first SEC game, college game day is there, night game there in Norman. I think Tennessee's the better team, Mark. I think Tennessee's the better team. I think they will show that. I think they win this game by double digits. I think they'll cover the spread and move to 1-0 in conference play.
Chris, we've got Florida taking on Mississippi State, and I don't know that we've ever seen a situation surrounding a head coach quite as drastic and dire as Billy Napier. We've seen dead man walking in week 2, week 3, week 4, but they didn't have to face the kind of schedule that Billy Napier may or may not get to face anyway. But considering that they've played 2 home games in what is supposed to be a huge home field advantage, and they've just gotten dragged around the field by good teams, but nothing exceptional. And now they go play Mississippi State. This Billy Napier situation is just like the administration's just waiting to get the phone call from the bank to say, okay, we got the funds, let her rip, and Billy's gone.
Yeah, Billy is absolutely, to your point, Mark, a dead man walking. It's not a matter of if, it's just a matter of when. You talk to folks down there, there were reports of the Board of Trustees meeting that was going to take place on Sunday that obviously never happened. And everybody's asking, is this the game where if they lose, he's gone? Is it the next game? It could happen at any time. I'd imagine now we're into game week. He's not going to get fired this week. If they lose to Mississippi State, is that the final nail in the coffin? Probably. State's a bad team. They just got blown out by Toledo, Mark. So this is the sicko game of the week in the SEC, right? Like, this is the one that you really got to love to a maybe a sickening level to watch this one and be locked in. I'll be there. I can admit I'm a sicko. I'll be watching that game. Very fascinating matchup, right? Both sides really feel like they want it, need it. Florida desperately needs it. So, it's a game I think Florida should win. Honestly, Mark, I just look at it. I think Florida's got more athletes. I really do. But who knows, man? Who can get their team up off the mat? Mark, is the big question. I do actually think it helps Florida getting out of the swamp. I just think with the situation they're currently in, it's really, really toxic. Billy Napier's getting booed. They're chanting fire Billy Napier. Getting away from that, going on the road, trying to disappoint the home crowd at the opposing venue. I think that can be a really good thing for Florida. And then for Mississippi State, their fan base is as distraught as any with, the loss to Toledo happening. So, again, Mark, it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. Billy's going to lose his job. It's a really, really tough situation down in Gainesville.
Hey, Chris, with Missouri messing around with Boston College in a pretty competitive game, I know that they took control in the second half, but still 27-21 in that one. Any concerns about Missouri possibly not being as good as many people thought taking on Vandy this week?
No, I don't think so. I think that, still early in season. That was their first real competition. The first 2 weeks they played the schools of the deaf and blind, respectfully. It just, they played nobody, right? So I'm not gonna be down on Mizzou for finding a way to beat a top 25 team on their home field. Say what you want about Boston College, but they got a guy in Castellanos at quarterback that he's just annoying enough, and I say that complimentary. Yep. He's just frustrating enough to make games interesting, right? Especially even if they have some inferior competition, he frustrates the defense. And you saw them take some shots and hit them with some breakdowns in the Missouri defense, which I know they're going to want to clean up. But I don't worry about Mizzou against Vandy. Unfortunately, Vandy, who we were really pulling for the 3-0 versus 3-0 matchup, they go on the road to Georgia State, and Mark, they turn back into the pumpkin, right? They turn back into Vandy. So I like Diego Pavia, their quarterback, love his game. I think he's kind of like Castellanos, where he could frustrate the Missouri defense just enough to, I think cover, because I think Mizzou's like a 21.5 point favorite in this game. But I do like Missouri to win. I don't have any concerns they could possibly drop this game. I do think Vandy covers, though. If you look at the series history in this, Mark, these games are typically closer than you would expect. Even last year, Missouri only beat Vandy by 17 points. And we all know what Missouri was and what Vandy was. And so you think about that score, and you're like, that don't make any sense. But these games, I don't know. Vandy typically plays Mizzou pretty tough. I don't think the game's ever in doubt, but I think they'll cover. But I think Missouri, I feel very, very confident they'll get the win. And I still am a believer in Missouri and what they can be, or what they are, excuse me. The offense is elite. It's all about the defense and the questions on that side with Corey Batoon. And we'll see how they handle Diego Pavia, especially after a week after Castellanos, I think, really stressed them out.
The rest of the SEC slate is just a bunch of get right games. Get healthy, get ready for the SEC season. The only name brand game,
Mm.
and it's probably in name only, is expecting that UCLA can put up any kind of fight in Death Valley, which if
I
we
don't see
watched
it.
them play against Indiana last week, they couldn't
Yeah.
even handle the Hoosiers. So this looks like a bad deal for UCLA out of the Big Ten taking on LSU.
Yeah, LSU big. I mean, I think that, I mean, the biggest question for them is, when I say how do they bounce back or how do they respond, people might raise an eyebrow mark, but it's just as important how you respond after an emotional win as it is an emotional loss. I mean, um, does LSU, attack this game the right way? Are they overlooking their opponent? God forbid. UCLA is not a good football team. They're not. We did our deep dive, actually, our preview on that game this morning. Deshaun Foster, he may end up being a really, really good coach at UCLA, but it's not going to be. I mean, he just doesn't have the team this year. So LSU, I think they're going to be in control of this one. I expect them to win and win big. They're a 24-point favorite. I would not be surprised they cover. You certainly, I think Brian Kelly will have his team locked in and focused. You're not going to be overlooking a Power 4 team, a team out of the Big Ten, but yeah, this is one of the worst teams in the Big Ten, and certainly a game that I think LSU should just be able to roll. I mean, I think there's things for LSU, though, you can definitely get out of this game, right? Cleaning up some things from last week. Garrett Nussmeier's got to be more efficient. Because you look at it, I mean, he got bailed out on those penalties, but he threw 2 pick sixes. I mean, you can look at it that way. I'm sure the LSU coaching staff is as well, that we're counting those as turnovers against you, right? When we're marking our points or our negatives or whatever, we're counting that against you, right? So I think you want to see Garrett Nussmeier be more in control. I mean, I'm curious to watch kind of some individual personnel with LSU. The wide receiver room outside of Kyron Lacey, the continued development of those guys and who's emerging on the outside. Caden Durham, the young freshman running back for LSU that really shined in that game against South Carolina. The running game as a whole, will it get going finally? They just have not been able to run the football to the clip they expected. Caleb Jackson, Josh Williams, and again, I just mentioned Durham. And then on the defensive side, again, lots of things to clean up, fitting their gaps correctly. But they should be able to take advantage of UCLA. I mean, it's just, again, not a good team. I think my score prediction marking that one was something like 44-17. I don't see UCLA posing much of an issue. I think LSU comes out of the gate hot. I think they're going to be focused, locked in. They've got this game. They've got South Alabama next week, then a bye, and then the Ole Miss Rebels comes to town, which, by the way, spoiler mark, we will be in Baton Rouge for that game. So a trip I'm very much so looking forward to. But no need for a look ahead here. I mean, that one's weeks away, and you got things to clean up, and I think they will, and I think LSU will win big.
Yeah, as you mentioned, Caden Durham looked good for LSU, and if he doesn't step up, maybe they don't pull it off in Columbia last week. And this UCLA team, this actually might be a good test for LSU in this way. There's no comparison between the two teams. It should be an easy win, but we've seen stranger things. It should be an easy win. However, UCLA is going to present like maybe they don't have a complete offense, they don't have a complete defense, but like 3 dudes that are NFL dudes, type dudes on each side of the ball that at least you can evaluate. Okay, let's see how this guy, our right guard, stacks up against their D tackle, or our wideout against their best corner, kind of thing, where UCLA has at least a handful of those kind of guys that you can evaluate your team without possibly being threatened on the scoreboard.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, it's you call it a get right game. It's just a good opportunity for LSU to clean things up, right? So, I mean, we maybe UCLA, we're in for the shocker of a lifetime, but I just don't see it, man. I think in Death Valley, LSU will be fired up to build some momentum. It's kind of, Mark, you're starting a new season. I mean, you beat South Carolina. It's like, all right, we won that big SEC road game. Yes, we lost to USC in week 1, but all of our goals are still in front of us, man. I mean, everything we want to achieve, getting into the college football playoff and maybe more than that, they're all in front of us. We're in control of our destiny, right? You're not sitting here with 2 losses thinking, oh my God, like it's a hopeless endeavor, backs against the wall. You're 1-0 in conference play. You got these 2 non-conference games upcoming, then the bye, and then you really get in the meat of things. So, I think for LSU, again, great opportunity to get off on the right foot in what feels like a quote unquote new season, and I think they will do that.
SEC Unfiltered, folks, with Chris Phillips. You can see right there his personal X handle, also where you can find SEC Unfiltered. Chris, appreciate you stopping by. Look forward to seeing you hopefully every Tuesday as you break down the SEC for us.
Absolutely, Marco. Look forward to it, man. Appreciate you, all your followers, listeners, and yeah, check us out at SEC Unfiltered wherever you get your content.